Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are really excited to talk to you a little bit about a programmatic SaaS management strategy and specifically how my wonderful client, Everbridge, specifically Alisa, and I've been driving a ton of really cool outcomes at Everbridge, leveraging the Zylo platform. So, without further ado, we'll jump in. I am Thom McCorkle. I'm a senior strategic account executive here at Zylo. Have the privilege of working with a number of our clients, making sure that they're hitting and reaching those goals that they're looking to achieve as they take on their SaaS management programs. Joining me today is Alisa Lavrentyeva with Everbridge, who has really spent the last year building out an amazing program that I can't wait to share more about. So, Alisa, let's hear a little bit about you and your role at Everbridge.
Thank you for the great introduction, Thom. Hi, everyone. My name is Alisa Lavrentyeva, and I'm a procurement and facilities manager at Everbridge. I've been with the company for over 8 years now. Everbridge is a global leader in critical event management and organizational resilience. Our platform helps organizations keep people safe and ensure business continuity during emergencies. And I'm really glad to be here today and share my experience.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to dig in. From an agenda standpoint, we're going to talk primarily looking at that journey that you've gone through. I think as I talk to a lot of clients, even just literally yesterday, they are where you were maybe a year or so ago and getting ready to kick this off. So lots of great best practices, tips of the trade, some things that are might seem extremely obvious, but when you step back, you realize what a linchpin they were for your overall continued success. We're also going to take a look at what is ahead now that you are where you are, and talk about some key takeaways and some next steps. So, with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about your kind of core challenges that you are trying to solve, those goals. But before we start, let's talk a little bit about what the team looks like today at Everbridge. You mentioned that you're a procurement and facilities manager. What are your core responsibilities, and what does your reporting structure at Everbridge look like today?
Sure. My main responsibilities at procurement side are sourcing and negotiating with suppliers, managing vendor relationships, and evaluating supply performance. Also, I'm overseeing contract renewals in collaboration with internal teams. Um, and it's very important for my role to have clean data when I'm going through this, when I do these responsibilities. And our organization reports to our CIO, and we have great support from our CIO on this project.
That's awesome, and I think that's really interesting too. When you think about the nuances that can come from a procurement team that is maybe reporting more to a CFO in the accounting and finance side versus the CIO. I know Everbridge, being a world leading technology platform yourself, obviously leverages and uses a lot of technology. So it likely makes sense that that reporting structure is there through your CIO. You mentioned clean data, and I think everyone thinks the same thing. But I guess let's talk a little bit about what clean data is to you. What are those things that are kind of the baseline you have to solve versus that next level of information that's valuable and helps you do your job?
Um, Clean data means that we have the correct usage, correct vendor data, correct spend, and when we have clean data, it really helps both procurement and our executive teams to have visibility on our spend, on our usage, and where we can find opportunities for cost savings. And the, it's very important to start cleaning the data before you start working on realizing savings and renewals and anything else that your responsibilities imply to. So that's how it all started for me. I just realized that we need to have clean data
That's
to
great.
my role successful.
100%. And we're going to talk a lot about this, but that upfront work really helps with the proactivity of it. You're able to, what I've seen, working with you and your team, it's you're really an asset to the organization, and coming with not only data driven suggestions but a point of view. So I think that's a really powerful outcome, and probably a great time for us to kind of talk a little bit and dig in a little bit more into overall goals that you had and those challenges. So I guess maybe in your own words, I want to spend some time on the goals. What was the finish line that you had kind of set for yourself as you kicked this project off?
So one of the first and most important goals was to realize cost savings by identifying redundancies in unused apps. So basically, when I was going through the cleanup exercise with my colleagues from other departments, I immediately revealed several cost savings opportunities. Um, as we reviewed the vendor list, we discovered that certain software had been purchased directly by employees using corporate credit cards, for example. And this it included tools for which we already have enterprise subscriptions. And we also identified overlapping vendors offering similar functionality to existing solutions, as well as unused applications that we continue to be charged for. And following these findings, we initiated a series of follow ups to eliminate redundant or unnecessary subscriptions. And the second important goal was to provide clean data to the procurement team and executive team, meaning that when we work on renewals and when we work closely with the teams on the renewals, we have the clean data to start with. And the same also, we need to have the correct usage, we need to correct documentation, order forms, and spend in order to be able to do the renewal successfully. And also, most importantly, we need to be able to share clean data with our leadership team.
Yeah, I think, the leadership team and that visibility is key. And, I think one of the superpowers that this program has been leadership backing from day one. So we've talked a little bit about the fact that you report and roll up and into the CIO. Let's talk a little bit about, how did you get that leadership support from the beginning? How did you use that to get traction as you went through and started progressing through this project?
Sure. So basically, I started bringing it up to our CEO that uh, we need the clean data on Zylo and we need cooperation of all the teams to get this clean data. And first thing that you need to clean is application owners information. This is the most important part because without that you cannot do renewal. You cannot have clean data basically. So um, I got all the support from our CIO and I pulled the report from Zylo that had vendor names, organizations, and app owners, missing app owners for the most part. And I provided this report to our CIO, and she lately shared it with our executive members who escalated it down to their teams to fill out the missing application owners. We gave them the timeline, and like after a couple of weeks, we gathered the missing data on the application owners. And that was a huge step forward.
No, for sure. And I think, every company out there, short of, maybe the 2 to 5% that still operate like pre-2000 IT teams, software is purchased and owned across the entire company. And so identifying and understanding who it is that actually owns this is going to be key, because missing data is a challenge. That's pretty broad, but it's true. It's, when you think about things like the keys to gaining access to usage data, that sits with whoever has admin permission. Those order forms and those invoices, yes, your larger agreements are certainly going through approved processes, procurement's tracking those in finance, but those business-led applications, prior to some of the processes that I know you've also been setting in place, those might be in somebody's inbox. And getting access to that, you can't go to IT and say, hey, give me Tom's inbox access so I can search for a contract. You have to even know to go talk to Tom or Bob or whomever. So that's really interesting. So really taking that buy-in from Sheila, your CIO, and having her go out and talk to those individual peers to be able to say, hey, this is something that we have to do. That top-down approach sounds like that was something that turned around in a few weeks, which is really great. Um, Along the way, were you also thinking about value back to those groups? I know, one of the things that we did when we kind of started rolling out and doing more readouts, we started with the CIO, but what were you thinking about? When did that come up, that idea come up of, oh, well, in exchange, we're also going to be able to provide you value by giving you that visibility and that reporting back to you and your teams?
So, excuse me.
No worries.
So, yes, once we got this clean data, the goal was to get together the further data from the employees.
Mhm.
And I started thinking about how would I do that. Um, and one of the in the beginning, I sent out the spreadsheets to the employees of a certain organization. I started with IT organization, and asked them to gather this information for me that was missing, like either provide me with a document or something else. And I haven't received much response because people have their own responsibilities. They're busy and they have their own priorities. So I decided to set up series of meetings with the team to go over their dashboard. Zylo created a dashboard for me specifically for different organizations, and we started with the low-hanging fruit with the CIO organization and the high-spent one too. Um, and I started working with the teams step by step on cleaning up the data, having these long meetings where we were in collaboration and looking through every single detail and cleaning up the data. And that's when they realized the value that Zylo brings to the table.
That's awesome. I think that's a great kind of opportunity to kind of talk through this, and really excited to show an example version of what that dashboard looks like. And I want to talk a little bit more about, what were those sessions like, and who were you inviting? For those who are maybe following along and taking notes, just a quick visual aid. It started with that top down, working with the CIO to then go out to their peers and say, we need you to flag folks that we can collaborate with. Once we had that, you had those owners assigned within those teams. Now we're kind of at the rubber meets the road. So, like you said earlier, it all started for Everbridge with who is it that's going to have the information that we need, and getting to those application owners. With that in mind, anything else that you want to talk through, or would you like to kind of show an example of the dashboard? I can certainly pull that up if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to show the example this
Great.
point.
Perfect. And a housekeeping note for those in attendance, this is not Everbridge's dashboard. It is an example of it inside of Zylo's demo account. So what we've done is using our demo data, kind of recreated some of those views that Alisa had mentioned that we were leveraging. And I would love to hear you speak to this a little bit, but just a little stage setting. Um, for Everbridge, the line that we drew was plus or minus above or below 50K. That might be different at your organization. It could go lower, it could go higher. It really kind of depends on where you're starting. But the key thing that I want to call out that I think was really valuable here was focus. So we were not only looking at the X hundred applications across the entire org, we had parsed it down and we had said, this is the CIO group, this is the marketing group, this is the product and engineering group, and then further segmented that to the higher dollar versus the low hanging fruit, or the kind of long tail, where I think we'll talk a little bit about what that low hanging fruit looks like. So it really kind of makes it, that analogy of, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So that's kind of my observations working with the team. But would love to talk through now. What was it that you showed? What were the things that kind of kicked off those meetings, and how did you operationalize this as you met with those app owners?
Um, so first of all, I came up with a list of questions to ask the owners when we start going through this exercise. Um, First of all, the most important question is, are you the correct app owner? Because sometimes it can be wrong as well, even after the first round of cleanup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the second question was, are you still using this vendor and planning to use it in the future? Is usage data applicable? Um, which is another important question that we came up to later, because not all the apps, as you know, not all the software has the usage data. You don't pay per usage for all of them, and you might not need to track that on your dashboard. Once we were going, we were going one by one. We would click on each one of them and see what's missing and what's still needed or not. So yeah, this is the example. So basically, I would click on the vendor and ask the team, are you seeing anything that is not correct, maybe, or is everything fine? And if there is a document missing in the contracts tab, for example, I would ask the team, do you happen to have this document? Because maybe it was done before procurement or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically would go through this exercise for each one of them. And while we were doing that, we did find some vendors that we were not supposed to be using anymore, that we canceled, but they still charge us. And the team, they saw the value of Zylo right away, right there, because right after this meeting, we already could see the savings, because we would reach out to the vendors to cancel, to see why they're still charging us, or we would reach out to somebody who was using the credit card to purchase certain software. And yeah.
I love that, and so I think what's really cool about that too is this dashboard was live and dynamic for you. So as you got those app owners, truly just sitting down and walking through all of those steps, asking them to validate this. I know as we were prepping for this conversation, you talked a little bit about hey, and you mentioned it earlier too, like you sent out emails and asked for validation, but like you said, people have day jobs, right? It's my if I'm a sales leader or if I'm in our marketing department, I might not be thinking about renewals top of mind. I'm thinking about how do I generate leads? How do I close business? So really kind of powerful to show this. And as you mentioned, in my experience showing this to the business, they probably start asking, Can I get access to this? How can I see my spend? What do you mean Bob is expensing that on a credit card? That shouldn't be happening." So it's really cool to hear those kind of quick wins happened as you were surfacing this information in the tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And another part of it was that we killed two birds with one stone, because uh, we started going to clean up the data, and also during this meetings, procurement was building relationship with the teams, um, and which is also very important, for procurement, because you work very closely with with the employees to on renewals or anything. So it was very, very useful exercise. And also, I know that you really did a great job creating this dashboard, because you broke it down by the sections. Um, Missing active order form, missing usage data, missing app owner. Um, and so we basically, like, at each meeting, we would go through every section. Some of them were smaller, like
Hmm.
we had almost all of the order forms in place. Some of them were larger, like where we don't have like usage. And right away, when team figured out that we don't have the right integrations, they started working with Zylo and doing that, and we started seeing value right away.
I love that, and I'm glad you mentioned that too. You know, a lot of the clients on the call probably have gone through a prioritized app exercise with Zylo, and this is very similarly templated based on that. But you know, I think a couple important things to call out there. You know, I always think that there is a priority set of applications for a core group, but that doesn't mean that you can't take those same tactics that we would do for here's your CIO priority applications, the tools that, you know, we have to keep always on and visible for our leaders and for our program. You can tailor that and you can say, okay, well, this is the CMO group. They care about a different set of applications than our CIO does because you know they trust the CIO and her teams to manage that. You know, so I think tactically speaking, what's kind of helpful to do here too is to, you know, I kind of clicked in and said, you know, here's your full list of those applications. It's also impactful to see these numbers add up, right? You know, if you're seeing, why am I getting bugged about a $10,000, $20,000 renewal, but they add up and they add up very quickly. So being able to see kind of that full details, bringing the user along. You know, we think about that missing active order form coverage, right? That's the difference between your team being able to be a partner and be proactive and come into a conversation and driving value to an app owner versus them saying, oh gosh, I just got an email from this vendor that we auto renewed. What can you do to save me? I think everyone on all sides of the table would appreciate the former scenario. And then last is, I think, you know, the education on usage is certainly something that business owners, some are savvy and really look at it and are managing their licenses and their users well. Others, you know, it's again not their day job. They might be saying, well, you know, vendor XYZ reached out and said I was out of seats, so I guess I'll buy 10 more. So kind of educating them that along the way as well, even outside of renewals, we could be repurposing licenses and reallocating those back to the folks that need them.
Absolutely. And also it was very educational also to the employees who would use like their credit cards for one-off purchases or subscriptions, where we would say, hey, we have the enterprise subscription already, and we have extra licenses that we can assign to you. You don't need to like spend extra money. And even after that exercise, we were planning to add it to our purchasing policy, to so the credit card usage should be approved by IT prior to purchasing software. Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one of those things that, you know, might seem obvious, but, you know, having the opportunity to say, "Hey, talk to IT before you go and buy software." As you mentioned, you made some changes to your purchasing policy too, which, you know, is an always evolving initiative at organizations. You know, I think that's a really good kind of segue point too. That you know, now that you have this data, now that you have this information, I want to talk about two things. First, you know, how do you use this as you're going into a renewal? Like, you know, kind of split screen a full record where you have renewal dates, you know, the notification period, the owner, you can see spend and you can see usage. Maybe we start there. You know, now that you have this, like, what does this enable you to now do for Everbridge?
it definitely enables us to do a lot of things at this point. We internally procurement team, we created the filters. For example, the renewal filter upcoming renewals in the next certain amount of months. And we're trying to stick to 120 days ahead of renewal. So basically, we're seeing all the renewals that are upcoming in the next 4 months, and we're starting to reach out to employees ahead of time to think about their renewals. Because as you know, there are some terms where it could automatically renew, if you don't provide notice within 90 days.
Hmm.
That's why it's best to start 120 days before. And then you would be adding this information. Also, is does it auto renew or not? And the team started being very grateful to us that we're so proactive, that we're reaching out ahead of time, because there were some apps that we had to cancel or renegotiate, or there are some large enterprise vendors where negotiation can take months.
Hmm.
And this clean data allowed us to get ahead of the renewals and not missing the renewal dates or auto renewal, which is even more important. And everybody started seeing value in this. And as you mentioned, we started getting requests, can I be added to Zylo as well? To smart renewals. And we also have our internal ticketing system that we use for renewals. So basically, how it works is that we reach out to people saying, if you would like to this renewal is upcoming, if you'd like to renew, please submit a ticket, and we'll take it from here. And we start getting tickets in the system, and we proactively started working with vendors and reaching out. And we would, there's a status for each renewal on Zylo, so we would assign procurement owners to each one of them, of the vendors, and we would change the status in process or have been renewed. And yeah, and that's kind of what we filter for. The ones that haven't been renewed yet, we're looking into them far in advance.
That's awesome. There were a few things you said there that are like the dream is real. One, you're looking at renewals 120 days out. Um, I was talking to another client who, I brought up an app that was coming up for renewal in early January, and they're like, "Oh, that's already done." And I know when they had started with Zylo, it was just fire drill after fire drill, missed opportunities. Like, oh, I personally get joy from hearing my teams say, like, if you apply that, like, the holidays are going to be not a hair on fire. The business always throws you a curveball. Don't get me wrong. There will be something, but to be in a space where that proactivity allows kind of those three critical questions. One, do we even need this app? You mentioned that as you were doing this review, not only did you find apps that were, we can just go ahead and cancel these, great low hanging fruit, but also, we thought we canceled these, so you can go and close that loop.
Mhm.
That comes up with redundancy as well. I think a lot of organizations want to reduce application redundancy, but you have to have the lead time. If you're going to be needing to move users over, if you're going to need to change platforms, that proactivity is really the unlock to start reducing those numbers of redundant applications. um, the usage piece. Yeah, 90 days ahead of your renewal, the vendor is probably starting to look at that renewal as well, and they're starting to think, how many are you going to renew? So being able to clean those users up as you're starting those renewal negotiations is really key. And then having the ability to spend the time and the effort to benchmark and to actually negotiate, and not have yourself up against a deadline where business says we can't live without this tool. So I get it, you're trying to negotiate a better rate, but we have to have it. So I think we're just going to have to sign, right? And all of that is enabled by lead time, which is really exciting.
Yes. And as I mentioned before, the app owner is the most important part that you need to clean up, because this is someone who has the visibility on the vendor, who has a relationship with the vendor, who knows if we need it or not, and the usage. And you would be working very closely with this person or people. Sometimes it's more than one. And it's very important to know who to reach out to about renewal and who to provide recommendations. If we already have the app like this, can we cancel it? How long it will take to cancel? Some of them are take only a few months to cancel. Some of them are easy. You can do months to months while you're transferring, but others can be much more complex, and it could take a year or more to move over to another one. So it's very important to know who you need to be working with, and also building relationships with the vendors are very important. Um, I I know some vendors, they got back to me saying, "Thank you so much for getting ahead of the renewal. We don't have to chase you for this at the last minute because it takes so long to do the renewal. You have to submit the PO and all these forms in order to get it done." So they were really grateful, and you can also get certain discount from the vendor if you have an early renewal as well. That
Yeah.
happened as well.
That's awesome. I think before we jump into the next piece, I hadn't even thought of that, but vendors they also want to have predictability, and by if as you're getting earlier and earlier, that's a great lever to pull to drive additional savings. What would removing the question mark on this renewal be worth it for you, and driving some savings there. So that's a great insight as well.
Yes.
Awesome. So with that in mind, anything else that you wanted to talk to on the dashboard before we jump back into the presentation?
No, I think I explained it
Yeah.
all, and nothing else to add here.
Awesome. My one plug that I will make before we jump over, as we think about what these dashboards are, if you haven't built dashboards, it can be a little bit of a head scratcher. This is based on our prioritized application, program that we can run and project we can run with all of our clients. So reach out to your CSM if you're interested in doing something similar. I just kind of hovered over the fields that we're filtering on so you can see, a way that you could potentially do this. We're looking at applications that are active and expired. We're looking at the number of active contracts. We'd put a spend filter on there. In this demo account, we're using the business unit field, but I know, others like with Everbridge, we've made a custom field that better aligns. So, just remember that any of that data that we were talking about inside of the app info, whether it be a standard field or you create a custom field, it's something that you can then use to visualize and report on. My last plug on the dashboard too is not only does this then give you a place to collaborate, like Alisa was mentioning, you have progress, you're tracking your progress and you're able to see, we're 67% of the way there. We started at 0. So that's fantastic. We're at 100%. That's an exciting snap a screenshot and send to your boss moment of we're there, we did it. This project is done. Obviously, we want to make sure that now we're monitoring new apps coming in and all of that, but just an exciting way to drive that. So, I think for here, a little bit of a recap. Where we went. Obviously, we started with this never missing a renewal. To now, we've talked about the proactive outreach to owners and joining those conversations, building those relationships. I'm so glad you called that out, um, and establishing that credibility and that expertise that you can come into a renewal not with a laundry list of questions like, "Hey, Tom, when does renew? Who's our contact? Are we going to keep it?" When you might ask some of these, but you know, what are we even buying? Instead, being able to say, "Hey, getting ready for this renewal. I see that we have a bunch of inactive seats. I'd love to talk about. Let's talk about where you're planning to grow, shrink." It's just such a strategic point of view, which is awesome to hear. So now I want to open it up a little bit and get your thoughts on, we're at this place. What's next for Everbridge and what's next for your team?
So the next thing for us would be um, to get as much automation as possible. So one of the automation goals is to have Zylo send automatic renewal alerts to the app owners 120 days before the renewal date. So instead of us reaching out to people and spend our time on this, Zylo will be sending the automated messages to everyone, every vendor owner. And also, we want to integrate Zylo with our current ticketing system, where tickets will be automatically created for upcoming renewals, for procurement visibility, first of all. And that automations will remove all additional transactional burden from our team, and we can focus on our priorities
That's awesome. No, I love that, and I put in a quote that I think I've paraphrased a little bit, but something that you said to me probably a month or two ago. As I was talking about automation, it's you can't automate junk data, and you've really emphasized the owner. We have to know who this goes to. So it's exciting to be at a spot where not only are we going to be able to drive those automations, but all of that detail that you're tracking, you can include that dynamically in those alerts, and using that as your starting point to build on to build on that progress, and to remove some of that manual lift. And then the thing about ticketing systems, which I love, is alerting is great, but you don't know what a user does with that information. Maybe they've internalized it in their thinking. Maybe they missed it, and we want to kind of bump them again. And that's all great, and we want to continue to do that. But by thinking about ticketing systems, that's our ability to drive accountability. That is, that's getting PRs before. Oh shoot, we need to put in a PR to get a signature. That's how we get to be, where our other systems where renewals are processed can become more valuable. So really, really exciting stuff looking ahead.
Very exciting. I really highly recommend everyone to implement ticketing system if you don't have it, because as Tom mentioned, accountability. Probably in all your organizations, you have the same experience. People would say, "Oh, procurement haven't done this and that." Like I reached out, nothing happened. But in the ticketing system, you can actually track everything.
Mhm.
You can collaborate with the vendor owners. You can collaborate with anyone, and you can see the history and the dates. Everything is recorded, and you can track, like you can go back and say, oh, okay, this is where we're at with this vendor, because there's a whole process on renewal, or especially onboarding a new vendor. There are a lot of different uh, like security clearance and things like that, vendor onboarding, and it all has to be tracked somewhere. You need to have procurement ticketing for that.
100%. And I'll add one more plug there too. Sometimes it can be the mental model of, okay, how does Zylo, the tool, work with our ticketing system? And it's the easiest way I like to put it is all of that pre-work, all of that organization, the research, the opportunity, and executing, your cleanup ahead of renewal, running your benchmarks, comparing alternative solutions. That's a great place to have live in Zylo. But then once you get into, like you mentioned, those execution steps that are sometimes have direct dependencies, like we can't kick off legal until we kick off our security review, or vice versa, depending on how your org is set up. That is where you need that ticketing, you need that accountability, that ability to track. So just thought I'd plug that a little bit there, just from based on some other questions that I've had from other clients.
Absolutely.
So I would like, key takeaways. This is your stage to share any other words of wisdom that you've picked up along the way. It's certainly what we've talked about before, but if anything else comes to mind that you would share with, other colleagues and folks at other companies who are trying to tackle the same problems.
I just wanted to mention that it's very important to get executive executive leadership support in the very beginning, and have them understand the value of clean data and Zylo, um, and get their support. That's a starting point for all of you, and then it will, after that it will go much easier if you start working closely with the teams, and provide them with provide them with the value, um, kind of like that they realize the value of Zylo, because sometimes the teams, they don't realize that. They're like, oh, it's just another tool that procurement is using, whatever. But you show them the real value, and they will realize it, and they will start working with you on clean data, on renewals, on everything. It's just a matter of providing them with this insight, and working together.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'm going to make one amendment to that. I would say certainly the value of Zylo, but I will plug the value of you and all the hard, awesome work that you and your team have done. It's been awesome to work alongside with that. And certainly from my notes, the thing that stuck out to me too is how when you went to go and question and talk to those owners, the consistency, number one, but then you didn't work in a bunch of jargon. It was very direct speak. Are we going to keep, just being very direct and very clear? And then I think you've got a repeatable framework that will continue to evolve and drive value at Everbridge.
Yes, that's true.
So with that in mind, Daniel, I don't know if we had any questions come in that we wanted to jump in on.
We did. First of all, that was fantastic. So starting off with the first question for Alisa, did you use their benchmarking insights? If yes, can you share your experience and outcome?
We didn't use it yet, unfortunately, but this is definitely the plan for the future to start using Zylo benchmarking. That's a great question. Thank you.
Great. Next question, and bearing in mind that this was a sample dashboard, the person asked, I noticed some larger publishers on your dashboard, i.e. Microsoft. So as you began prioritizing your effort, did you find that larger, more complex publishers such as Microsoft and Adobe presented challenges based on license type? And how did you overcome these complex arrangements?
Well, you're thinking through that. I can jump in how we suggest it, and then certainly if you have any thoughts to add into that, there are definitely going to be large suppliers and large vendors, especially when you get into solutions that can be quite customized and tailored to what, how much, and even how direct versus reseller, et cetera, that often require a little bit of a bespoke view. Certainly with tools like Adobe, we can get the provisioning data to be able to understand that, but we might want to go another layer deeper in each of those. So I think that there's definitely a parallel track of, you're working with your Microsoft team, working with your Adobe team, or wherever that lives inside of collaboration apps, et cetera. At least I didn't know if you had any other thoughts on top of that, but that would be kind of a broad answer that I would share.
I just wanted to add how we work with the large vendors like that. I know that we have few Adobe products, and we split them in on Zylo dashboard. We created new vendor record for each product. That's the best way to track it versus having one record for all Adobe vendors. All Adobe products. So this is my recommendation.
So that would look like, you might have a Creative Cloud app that's representing your full Creative Cloud suite, and then Premiere, and then all of the individual. Is that how you're thinking?
Yes, that's how I'm thinking. Yeah.
Perfect.
And then we had one more question. Did you consider Usage Connect for those applications that do not support a direct integration?
I believe we did. Thom, you can provide more detail on that, but I'm sure you were working with our IT team on that.
Yeah, yes is the answer, and in fact, that's what our call is in 2 hours with with IT. But 100%, everyone here or most folks here have probably gone and started tackling usage data, and it is an environment where vendors have different degrees of APIs and access and reports, and depending on what plan you have, might handcuff how your IT team or your identity team is provisioning SSO. So that is definitely one of the steps. Is there a direct integration? Awesome, because in that meeting you have, if not the person who can set it up, the person who owns the budget and probably works closely with that admin to set it up. Then on the single sign-on side, there is understanding of, do we have a little bit more complex licensing, or are we maybe not on a plan that we can get SAML enforcement or SSO configured? In those cases, Usage Connect definitely comes up. And when I think about, and when I talk to my clients about Usage Connect, there's even a little bit of a segmentation that happens there as well. Is this a tool that you need to regularly monitor? Is this a part of maybe even more than quarterly audits, something that you're constantly running out of seats, et cetera? Then, let's definitely go automation. And automation should always be a goal. But I always say, don't let the ad hoc get in the way of driving value. If it's something where, because you're thinking 120 days out from renewal, getting a report from the admin dashboard, using that to reclaim those seats, and I'm still flabbergasted that it's 2025 and there are admin dashboards that don't give usage data, but there are. And if that's the case, reach out to your vendor and say, we have to have this information in order for us to progress with this renewal. So very long-winded way of saying, I think Usage Connect should always be an avenue and always be an option. And your team can definitely help you think through when is it the best time to apply that.
It's great. I think we have time for two more questions here. How was the process to internally check the utilization of certain types of softwares? And did you have any internal pushback?
Yeah, so internally, it depends who manages the software internally. Sometimes it's our IT team or it's engineering. They have visibility on the usage. So depending on the tool I'm looking into, I would reach out to the team and check with them if the usage I have is accurate, and look into it together. Just basically have a meeting and see, is this usage accurate? What's your data? Do we have actual licenses, the unused licenses that and we should downsize or we should assign to somebody? So again, it comes back to building relationships with the teams and working together on understanding the usage, because procurement doesn't always have the visibility on the usage, and the teams IT team is your best friend, I would say. They're the best friend of mine here at Everbridge, and I recommend to build this relationship with them.
I actually do have a part two to that. Did you part two? Did you encounter any defensiveness, maybe, of, hey, we've got this. I don't need to be sending you my usage data. We're managing this. Don't worry.
Normally I haven't. No.
Okay.
It was mostly when I was asking them, it's mostly with the engineering team. Maybe when I asked them, oh, can we downsize? You might be not using all of the licenses, and no, we need more. Actually, let's go purchase more. They always need more. But there was nothing confrontational. They were very grateful that I'm checking on that and cooperating.
Awesome. That's great. And then we're just going to wrap up with one more question here. When contract owners leave the company, is there the ability to alert the Zylo admin about this so the admin can reach out to determine the new owner?
So I'm not sure. I believe that's a manual process. I don't think it can be automated to have the owner added automatically. But what we usually do is we reach out to the manager of that person who left and say, hey, this is the vendor we're missing the owner for, and so used to be the vendor owner. Who is it now? And they would assign the new vendor owner to the app, and we'll just go ahead and update it on Zylo dashboard right away.
Yeah, absolutely. The only piece of functionality that I'll call out too is the platform will also, is some reporting out of the platform that can say, show me all of my app owners who have left the company. So I'm actually thinking now that's something we should add to your dashboard.
Yes.
And then because of this approach where the Everbridge team has kind of segmented it by ELT owner, even if that manager isn't responsive, you have that full chain that you can work your way up to get that owner. So
yeah, that's correct. That's a good point, because we do have them broken down by organization, and we have ELT owners listed for each one of them. So in the worst case scenario, if you don't find who the manager was, you will reach out to the ELT, and they will be, and you will be working with them on identifying the vendor owner.
Great. That was, I think that was our last question for today. So we could probably talk about next steps now. So thank you everyone for attending today. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, all of the attendees will receive an email with the recording within the next 24 hours. If you are a Zylo client, your SAE will reach out to answer any questions you might have and offer any support that you might need. And if you are a prospective Zylo client, your account executive will reach out to you also within the next few days. So thank you, Thom. Thank you, Alisa. Thanks for joining us today, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.